Such a badass thing to say. Hey, everybody, it's me, Will.
And me, Kristen.
And welcome back to another live recording of Guide to the Unknown.
Yes. I don't know. Hope everybody out there is gripping it and ripping it just like we are. That's what we're giggling about.
Grip it,
we
rip it.
got on the show.
Yeah.
That was my way of saying go ahead and start the stream.
Yeah. Grip it and rip it.
Grip
That's the
it and
kind
rip
of like jargon crap that like people probably assume Zach Baggins says behind the scenes. Like, do you think that they don't say action on
Rip
that?
it and
They
rip it.
say like, let's make this happen. You know, like they
Yeah.
have like some coolio
Right.
phrase. Yeah.
Let's make magic.
Do you think he believes in magic? The big?
Maybe.
Right?
Not impossible, yeah.
Certainly not impossible. It would sort of be in keeping. You know, I do have to say, you have been the one saying this for a while, but I've been following him on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
You're so right. He's
delightful.
Like a genuinely nice, fun person who has like a sense of humor. Like I am completely turned around on him.
He seems like a lovely guy.
He looks like he's having a ball.
Yes.
And I don't know. His life seems like a party, and he seems like a very kind person,
Totally.
which is all that you really want, you know,
from a person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like whatever. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I was gonna say like whatever he does on Ghost Adventures, like that's a version of his persona, so it's true that is him.
Sure.
But I think it's also clear that he like plays some of that stuff up. The self-serious stuff I still think is worth like laughing at.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I genuinely like him now.
I know. He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
That's definitely not his real voice. So just that shows me that he's putting on a show.
It's strange, right?
It's
like
very strange.
He goes for his like deep voice. Like I'm doing more of a Bam Margera, but honestly, he and Bam Margera are very similar to me. So
yeah. Honestly, yeah, there are a lot of ways that they're the same.
Now,
Will, do you want to
catch some ghosts?
Do you want to comment on your look? Because people are commenting on in the chat. And by the way, hello, guys.
Hey, listen, the people dig it. All right. What do you want me to say? They love it.
Sure.
It gets them going.
CBFR says, hey, Will, are you going to slide across the floor in your socks and underwear next?
Yeah.
Michelle asked you the cool guy where Will usually is. Or
yeah.
Who's the cool guy where Will usually is.
Hey, I don't even walk anymore. I perpetually slide around in my socks and underwear. I don't even have to take steps. I don't even have to get momentum. You know how he like slides in that doorway? That's me like sliding down the hall to get something to drink, sliding up the stairs without taking any steps.
You never have to lift a foot from the floor.
I'm gliding. I'm so
dream.
cool.
Yeah, until you skid into something and break one of your toes again. Do you guys know that Will broke toes on both of his feet within like weeks of them?
Oh yeah.
Of each other?
I forgot about that. How did I do that again? It was recent.
You were walking down the stairs to the basement and you had moved the couch to like the edge of the stairs and you smashed your pinky. And then I don't know about the second one.
Yeah, I don't remember the second one. But I'd be smashing toes, yo. You can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs.
Right?
And now my feet look like omelets. There's no bones.
I'm sending mine back.
Yeah. Now this is the kind of humor that everybody came here for.
Yeah.
The killer Rogers Kids Comedy Hour.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What is causing all this? Yo, welcome. Andrea says, need this tonight. Just listen to the Everything is Illuminated on Book Club. On Book Club Schmook Club, I'm guessing?
Woof.
Did we cover that?
Oh, we sure did, Will. That was the one where we cried.
We cried?
We were doing the episode. Yes.
Yeah, I highly doubt I've ever cried.
Yeah, no, you cried live.
I cried on the show?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
We both did.
Oh, that's heavy.
Yeah, we had... we had daddy feels.
Oh, no.
I know.
Oh, no.
It was sad.
Hey, well, welcome from that party, Andrea.
Yeah.
Over here, I'm going to talk to you about butthole monsters. Not a joke.
It'll be quite different.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different from that other episode you just listened to over here tonight. That's fantastic. What a double feature.
That's a good book. I remember when my friend Katie recommended it, and when we're reading it, I was like, why did she recommend this right now? Oh my God. But Katie like loves sad things and only consumes sad media. So I guess that's why.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Who needs it? I don't need sad stuff in my
Me
life.
neither. I can't relate. Katie loves sad things.
No way.
And I
Keep it
never
away.
consume sad things like that. So it especially floored me, plus the timing. I remember that was a doozer-rooney. You don't remember that?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess I
yeah.
have I blocked it. Andrea says I did cry a few times.
Yeah, we had to stop recording.
Really?
Yes, and like come back in.
That's
It was
fascinating.
brutal.
Well, I'll never listen to that.
I was about to say I will never listen to that.
There's a 0% chance of me ever going back to that episode.
No way.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, look at the emotional journey that we've, Kristen and I contain multitudes.
Oh, truly.
Look how far we've come. Look how different we are.
Yeah, especially Will right now. It looks quite different.
I'm going for my Baggins vibe.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a
it's
hoodie
Baggins.
and a coat. I had my super cool sunglasses for a little bit. Hey,
That's right. William Baggins.
I gotta paint I'm gonna paint my fingernails black next week.
I don't think he paints his nails.
Well, maybe that's more Margera. I'm
could
gonna
be,
go
yeah.
full badass.
Oh my God.
Can we cover? Oh, what's like?
Please don't.
There must be like absurd cornball horror that we can cover. You know?
Yeah, like gothy, like loser tough guys. Is that
Yeah.
the vibe?
Yeah. Do you want to do a theme episode and be goth losers next week?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fun.
All right.
Absolutely.
People, drop your suggestions of what I would still like for there to be something cool, like it's fun. It's
wait,
rich of me to say. What?
I thought you meant us dressed like goth losers.
Oh, I think it's got to be on theme though. Like I think we have to be talking about something that befits our mystique.
I don't know how we're gonna do that. I mean, we could talk about something befitting our mystique, but I don't think we can. I don't want to specifically call out like losers for a whole episode.
I mean, well, but like, hey, like the Crow is both lame, and
like
I'm sure
fictional...
there's like,
okay,
yeah, I want there to be something like sociologically interesting or folkloric or, which is, I was gonna say it a second ago. It's kind of rich of me to ask for something like that after last week we covered Scary Movie for a while, but I would like there to be something of like historical note in it. But it'd be super fun to like. Allie does my makeup, makes me look like a dark boy.
No, you shouldn't even have Allie do it. You should do it.
I should do it?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. All right. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Do it in a heartbeat.
What would that theme be? It's like, I don't know, figures that dark boys rally around.
Dark Boy Rally.
Dark
now
Boy Rally.
Spin-off podcast.
So it's like The Crow. Somebody said Tyler Durden. I feel like that's like a thing.
Imaginary friends, right? Like Tyler Durden has an imaginary friend. The Crow though is like justice monster. Emotional justice monsters.
Emotional justice monsters.
We have a week to think about it. Feel free to post.
I'm not against this idea, but I think we gotta.
Maybe it needs more time to cook. Maybe next week is too soon. But if we could come up with something, that'd be pretty fun.
A unifying. I'm very into the idea of us looking weird and goth.
I'm very into the idea of us wearing costumes for different themed things.
Yeah,
that seems very fun to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm into that. Using whatever we have at home. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Hell yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to think about it.
Yes, DBFR. I saw you type the Tyler Durden thing.
Yeah.
Let's see. Imaginary characters.
Oh, Dana wants me to wear eyeliner. Done.
Ask and you shall receive.
Done and done. Easy. I have a drawer full of makeup right here. So sure.
Mocha, are you talking about my weird jewelry? Like weird earrings and stuff like that? They said, please wear your weirdest jewelry. I miss it so much. It's pretty goth, I guess. Caitlin says Green Room has some punky goth characters. Yeah, we'll have to figure it out. But by the way, I am wearing weird jewelry tonight. If you're talking about me, I'm wearing my mouth earrings. I don't know if...
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always makes me think of that Real Monsters lady.
I know. Everybody says that. And it reminds me of it too. It was actually part of a Valentine's Day collection
Huh.
from Midge Blitz, who's a jewelry designer that I like, because it was like red and kind of heart-shaped-ish, but it totally looks like all real monsters.
Interesting. I like the name Midge.
Yeah, I do
I
too.
feel like that's come around
Mm-hmm.
to being kind of cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it too. It's a good name. Hey, Bob.
Um,
Hey.
hey, Babo. Hey,
Oh,
Bobby.
sweet. Yeah, I still wear my weird stuff, but I guess I have been using my gold hoops a little bit more. I'll have to switch it up during quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, stinky boy.
Yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. All right, everybody, we're about to start the show. We would always appreciate it if you would consider sharing this video, get some other eyes and ears in here, whatever. Maybe take this opportunity to write reviews and stuff like that. That'd be really cool.
That
Posts.
would be great.
We need what we need is like an underground. We need like
A street team.
a street team and a mission statement, right? Like we
Mhm.
need the people to like go forth and spread the word of GTTU. How can we do that? Anyway.
We need a Rihanna army.
Yeah.
No, Navy. Rihanna Navy.
Yeah, we need our queen bee beekeepers or whatever the hell, whatever the hell Beyonce has.
Bayhive.
The beekeepers.
The beekeepers.
It's called. To be
I
fair,
think it's so insane that Rihanna's fan base is called the Rihanna Navy because of Battleship. That is so crazy.
oh, is that what that is?
Yes.
Hey, does Battleship suck?
I don't know. It seems like it does. I've never seen it, but
Yeah. You know what's
it
a
felt
real
like it did.
you know what's a real thing to cover someday? Fake horror. Like, Cowboys and Aliens or Battleship, where it's like, oh, we just shoehorned in some weird monster stuff.
Oh, I
Even
forgot.
though it doesn't
Battleship
work.
has weird monsters. I really don't even remember what.
Yeah, it was the game Battleship, which was
Mhm.
only ever about boats. And
Right.
I'm pretty sure they put aliens in that movie.
I think you're right.
It's fake horror.
I forgot about Cowboys and Aliens.
Just straight fake horror.
Weird. I don't even think of those as horror though. I just think of those as action movies.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But yeah, there's supposed to be some element though of like
Yeah, right.
the surreal or supernatural or paranormal to them,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Weird. Yeah, I didn't think thought about that.
Extraterrestrial, I guess.
Mhm.
Aliens really got moved from like being
Yeah.
scary to being like action enemies.
Yes, they definitely are.
Yeah.
In Independence Day and whatever.
Mm-hmm. Hey, they should make a movie called Dependence Day,
Ooh.
where you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
Just can't.
Very scary. The scariest movie of all.
Terrifying. All right. let's go for it. Let's do a show.
All right, let's punch it. I'm going to put that on airplane. Okay. Hello, welcome to Guides the Unknown. I'm Kristen.
And I'm her little brother, William.
And we're going to grip it. We're going to rip it. We're going to roar it. We're going to deliver you a great show this week.
Yep. It's going to be perfect. You're going to love it. You will never have heard anything better.
That's right. We are going to talk about Japanese horror, also known as J-horror. So I'm going to cover kind of the origins and what may have led J-horror to be the specific ish niche
Whoa.
that it is. And then Will's going to talk about some awesome monsters.
Yeah, I just straight up have like super sweet like ghosts and stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
But before we dig into all of that, Guide to the Unknown, we do this every week. We talk about monsters and pop culture and creatures. It's a fun little spooky party. So if you're into that kind of a thing, make sure that you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts. You can watch this show on youtube.com/talkbomb, and you can make sure that you never miss a future episode by following @GTTUpod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you're listening to this and it's already not enough, you need more on top of this, go hit up patreon.com/GTTUpod. If you back us at our $4 level, that's the Netherworld Warrior level, you're going to get access to a ton of bonus material that the average normie will never see or hear. That includes an entire exclusive podcast just for our Patreon peeps. We've also got merch available right now. If you go to tpublic.com/user/GTTUpod, if you're thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm listening to the show, but it's killing me that I'm not swaddled in it, go get yourself a shirt. What else?
That's right. Well, on Patreon, if you are one of our donors over there, one of our Netherworld warriors, this coming Sunday, we are going to be doing a live stream over there at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where for the first time, we're going to hash out our potential topics for the next month live with you guys. So, in front of you, with your input, you can help kind of mold the direction potentially of the show next month and maybe give us ideas and we can just sort of bounce things off each other. So that's going to be this coming Sunday, May 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just for people who are members over at patreon.com/GTTUpod.
Yeah, pay attention to those
Mhm.
people behind the curtain. You
That's
might get
right.
to see what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, it should be really fun. I'm looking forward to it, and it may end up becoming a more regular thing.
Yeah,
So definitely come join us for that, and we'll have a good time.
yeah, for sure, without a doubt.
All right, cool.
Cool. Let's get to it.
Okay. So we decided to do this topic, and I thought to myself, when I think of J horror or Japanese horror, what do I think of that as just off the top of my head? And the first things that I thought of are the American remakes because we live in America. So that was probably my first entry into it, like The Ring, The Grudge, some others that I forgot existed until I looked them up, like Dark Water and One Missed Call, are actually
Yeah.
remakes of original Japanese movies, and also the manga, or is it manga?
I think it's manga.
Okay, the manga artist Junji Ito, who
Mm.
does a lot of really cool horror sorts of things. That's pretty much my entire perspective on Japanese horror.
Mine
William
too. I
Okay.
almost think that like you and I might be considered straight basic on
Oh,
J
definitely,
horror.
definitely, definitely, definitely.
But everything that I've ever seen, even if it turned into something that was frequently mocked, like The Ring, is the creativity behind it or the conventions within that sort of storytelling are so unique
Mhm.
and so unusual and gripping and emotional and scary that
Yeah.
it always makes me want to know more. I want like that feels like a whole like untapped horror, pool for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we've talked about definitely here and there in the course of larger episodes, but we haven't like completely focused our high beams on it before. So I was thinking about that, and then I was like, okay, what do those things have in common to me? Because I think of Japanese horror as being particularly interesting, particularly creepy. And I was like, okay, so in what ways? Like just within my little teeny view of it, what is Japanese horror? And the things that came to me off the top were child tormentors,
Hmm.
like a creepy little ghost kid who's
Oh,
after you.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Sort of like the Sadako,
mhm,
like kid with the long black hair
yeah,
covering their
that
face. Yeah.
yes, that's another big thing, which I'll get to. That wasn't something that I thought of off the bat, but a lot of people associate J horror with like a little kid or a woman with hair covering their face wearing all white. And there's potentially a reason for that. So I think of like child tormentors because there's also the kid in The Grudge. I can't remember what his name is.
Hmm.
But I know you know. What is it?
Toshio.
Toshio. Scary.
Toshio. Toshio. There was a night I was watching The Grudge with Bobby, and one way or another, it was probably like 4 in the morning, who knows? But we were watching Toshio, this little boy who every time he opens his mouth, a cat meows. And we just put ourselves in the shoes of being Toshio's stepfather, even though he's a ghost, and just being like,
Right.
time to go to bed, Toshio. Come on. And for some reason, Toshio only communicates through the lyrics or through the tune of Madonna's Girls Just Want to Have Fun. So he goes,
Cyndi Lauper, but
yeah,
yeah.
he goes, Toshio has fun. And the stepfather goes, I know, buddy. We'll have fun in the morning, pal. Come on, we gotta go to sleep now. I'm Toshio. Come on, buddy. Just like exhausted by this ghost you're supposed to be watching.
Yeah, I know.
Whatever. That's just a little history lesson on something I said once.
Oh no, I was being the stepfather
Oh,
to
okay.
Toshio. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that
just
was
tired.
the reason. That was
Overworked
the
and
reason I
tired.
prompted you.
Oh, okay. Just like, yeah, Toshio. We'll have fun in the morning, bud, is such a parental thing to say. It makes
Yeah,
no sense. It's
yeah,
just,
totally.
please go to sleep.
Just exasperated and like, will this get you? Can this appease you? We'll have fun in the mining, bud. Okay.
Please be asleep now. Uh,
So, yeah, child tormentors. I also think of this sense of like creeping and paranoia, something kind of on the periphery on its way to get you,
mm,
both literally and figuratively. Something you just kind of can't get away from seems like a distinctly Japanese horror thing to me. And then visually, the idea of things literally being dark in tone and kind of desaturated, that might be partially something that was just really popular with movies in the 2000s, but that kind of like blue tint to everything, everything's kind of like dark and gray and shadowy,
right.
feels like a little bit of an at least American remake of Japanese horror movie thing to me.
Totally, like, overly color corrected so that
Mhm.
everything is sickly
Yeah.
and, like, the contrast is just cranked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I realized as a tag on to that, I kind of forgot about it until I was making this list, but I also associate it with sometimes either super dark ideas and tones and or body horror like that movie Audition that I've never seen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So and the other thing I knew about it besides these kinds of movies was stuff about Junji Ito, and I really don't know a whole lot about him. I've seen some of his work. I've never actually read one of his books, like front to back or anything. You've told me that they're really cool, but they're very upsetting. So I haven't gotten into it.
Not
But
even necessarily upsetting,
or
more
growth.
nauseating. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very gross. The artwork in those stories, like, I think one of his most famous, mangas is called Uzumaki. It's the
Mhm.
spiral where an entire town sort of, oddly falls prey to the concept of a spiral.
I've seen that. I've seen like a spiral eye
Yeah,
on a person that looks
yeah.
really, really cool.
And the artwork is so evocative and so clear and so gross, where you see body parts sort of stretching and folding in on each other as a human literally is contorted into the shape of a spiral,
Mhm.
among a million other things, like the cannibalism, people like, you know, like licking their lips, like disgusting, disgusting, but so scary and fascinating and unique.
Yeah, that might be too much for me. I think that's really awesome and I respect the craft, but I don't love being grossed out.
Yeah, sure.
Um so that I mean that's really the only thing I know about him and that he works in black and white a whole lot. I think he also works in color, but a lot of things are black and white.
Hmm.
And I was wondering if that's a low key commonality in Japanese horror is black and white or kind of an absence of color because you do think about the, ghost woman or child wearing white with black hair all coming down. A lot of these movies are very desaturated. I don't know.
That's
That
interesting. Yeah, I actually do kind of wonder what that is. That my gut feeling about things like Uzumaki are maybe budgetary.
Mhm.
Like, you'd have to pay someone to, like, a colorist to fill in. So maybe it saves on the cost of doing it. But you're right. There is like a sort of like stark blacks are black, whites are white,
Right.
like
Yeah.
contrast to everything. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I wonder if it's, a coincidence or it is something that a lot of people are drawn to and then use that way.
Yeah.
And then when I looked into it further, I saw slash remembered that there are a lot of other things that come from Japan horror wise, especially video games like Silent Hill, Resident Evil, which I know that you're currently really into,
Mm.
and also a game that I don't know of but looks really awesome called Fatal Frame. Do you know about that?
Only a little bit. Fatal Frame is most of these things are something of a blind spot to me. I'm presently sort of sponging Resident Evil.
Right.
I've wanted to do Silent Hill for so long.
Mhm.
And Fatal Frame is one of those things that as they were coming out, I remember thinking, oh, that's a knockoff. But now,
Okay.
these days, I'm like, oh, what a novel idea. It's a person walking around with a camera and you can only see the ghosts through the viewfinder.
Right.
So it plays into that idea that, like, there could be spirits or surrounding us right this very second. We just can't see them.
Yeah, I know
Um,
we've talked about that concept a bunch and we both really like that idea.
Yeah, very fascinating. I don't know much about them, but like I've straight up like the amount of times I've thought to myself, boy, I should go on eBay and buy some Fatal Frame games, only to be like, well, I did that with Silent Hill and they're just sitting on that shelf, so maybe I shouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure.
Unusual restraint, Will. I'm impressed.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
My back catalog, honestly, I've thought, you have no idea how many times I've thought of starting a show that's literally just called My Back Catalog,
Yeah.
where I'm not allowed to buy anything new until I go through everything that I've already bought that I have not experienced.
That would last, like, your whole lifetime.
Oh, 1,000%, yes.
Yeah. You can't do that.
No, it would not work.
That won't do. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what those were just my random impressions about what I think maybe distinguished Japanese horror from other Western horror. But I looked into what actually distinguishes it that other people have noticed and kind of fine lines of demarcation. So it differentiates from Western horror in that it generally focuses more on the supernatural as opposed to human serial killers and slashers. There's more suspense and more of a creeping sense of dread. So that was something I guess I picked up on. And in general, Japanese horror is less about how to defeat a bad guy. Because after all, a lot of their bad guys are supernatural. So it's not necessarily, I mean, some Western bad guys are supernatural too, but like an equivalent of Jason doesn't seem to be really present in at least popular Japanese horror, where it's, at least in beginning movies, like a human entity who you could conceivably defeat in some sort
Right.
of way. That's not really a super present trope in Japanese horror. A lot is more about how to, it's like, it's kind of grim, which is part of why it's kind of awesome. A lot is just about how to endure living through this thing tormenting you or how to get away from it. Like you defeating it and just living a normal life is often off the table.
Mm.
It's just not really an option. You kind of just have to accept that you're bested because whatever is going on is bigger than you.
Yeah, I really love that. One of the best and most interesting things about The Ring is that there's no stopping it, there's only passing it on.
Right.
There's just dodging it for now.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a common thing. It's not like you're going to be the one to end this and smash the tape or whatever.
Mhm.
It's that like maybe you can like get some of the heat off yourself, but it's always going to be out there.
Yeah, I love that.
And I do too. And there's some kind of cultural reasons for that that are kind of interesting. There's also an idea in these movies and books and video games that there are rules to the universe. Like there are ways that I know you in particular, but we definitely like to talk about the rules and mechanics of these things. There's an understanding in a lot of Japanese horror that these rules are there and they know they're there and they understand some of them, but they also know that they are so beyond them that they can't even really totally conceive of them. So there's some guidelines they get, but they know they might even not even have the full picture, might not even be able to work within that. And so it's probably pretty hard to beat something that you can't understand, which also feeds into that sense of just inevitability. This thing is
Mhm.
always going on. We know it's adhering to something. We think maybe we understand that something, but we might not. There's always wiggle room for us to be totally wrong and we're just screwed.
Yeah.
So commonly mentioned, as I said before in articles about J horror, is the trope of women or children in white with their hair covering their faces being like a really prevalent thing. So that's again with the black and white. And also, this might come down to being as simple as the fact that traditionally Japanese people are laid out in white kimonos at their funerals. So somebody is coming back from the dead, they would be wearing white.
That's
So
interesting.
it may just be as, like, logical and mechanical as that.
Yeah, I
At
I
least in its origin.
I kinda like that. That's almost very, sort of like Night of the Living Dead. There's a character that, is in the graveyard wearing a suit, and it's
Mhm.
because that's what they were buried in. Like, he almost
Yeah.
from a particular angle, it looks like some sort of a professional. From another
Mhm.
angle, it's like, "Oh, no, 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 no." That is like, they were dressed up to look their finest because
Right.
they are dead.
Right, it's just their funeral suit. There's, like, nothing more to it, nothing more sinister or whatever. It's just like, yeah, so what you're buried in.
Yeah.
But everything gets a scarier context when it's, like, a shambling child or a woman with their hair in front of you, like, coming
Oh
to
my
you,
god. Yeah.
so then it's gonna look freakier. So I wanted to find out about the influence of like Japanese culture in general on their horror and like why Japanese horror, and you can apply this to everything, not just Japanese horror, but it is a particular brand of horror that's really popular because it's really unique and cool. But I'm just saying you could apply this kind of wondering to any demographic of people anywhere.
Oh, sure.
But I just wanted to see like maybe what's up with the culture or history that led to Japanese horror being so specific in this way, because there's probably something going on that's a little bit different than what's going on in the West or other places. And that's definitely the case. I mean, that's the case for everything, but you know what I mean. So I found this website. It was so awesome. The article is so detailed. It'll be linked in the show notes. There's a website that is at horror.dreamdawn.com. That's by a video game developer whose first name is Chris. I can't remember his last name right now. He works for Oculus, that Facebook like VR
Oh,
thing.
sure.
And he develops video games, and he's especially into horror video games. So this article that I found was a lot about Japanese horror video games, but it even went beyond that. It was so awesome, so detailed, so thoughtful. I really loved that article, and I used it a lot for especially this next section.
Hmm.
So I definitely encourage you to go check that out. I thought it was so interesting. So, first of all, because Japanese horror has such a supernatural bent overall, the role that religion in Japan plays is kind of interesting because, as we've talked about on the show before, like, even though religion is, depending on what your religion is thought to be this kind of like pure uplifting thing, it's also a lot of times very centered around death and has kind of occulty elements. And so they're sort of, religion and horror are intertwined in a lot of ways. So, the main religious practices in Japan are Shinto and Buddhism, and those are practiced sometimes interchangeably and on top of each other. I know that with Buddhism in particular, or maybe Shinto as well, it's considered a religion, but it can also just be thought of as a belief and thought system. So, like, you can be somebody who thinks of your religion as Christian, but also be a Buddhist.
Hmm.
Like, you can kind of lay it on top of things, and it's cool. Like, Buddhism isn't really uptight and dogmatic about like these are the rules, these are the beliefs, and this is it. And it sounds like Shintoism is probably kind of similar, or just Shinto. I'm not sure. But so neither of them are religions that require singular membership, and rites and rituals are done kind of more traditionally than they are done because of major religious implications. So, because of that flexibility, Japan has legends and thought processes from two different religions with their own beliefs about life and death to draw from. And that really allows people who pay attention to those things, because, like everything, there are people in Japan, I'm sure, who just don't pay attention to either one of them.
Right.
But they kind of allow you to like free think and mix and match. And even if you don't pay attention to them, like, I would imagine that they seep into the culture in some sort of way, the same way that if you don't pay attention to Christianity in America, you're probably still somewhat aware of the ideas about it. Um, so the beliefs for Buddhism about death are that Buddhists believe in the never ending cycle of death and rebirth, so reincarnation, and that you can only end that cycle when you wake up to the idea that material life and a lot of the things that we care about is just kind of a facade, which is reaching enlightenment. So if you ever reach enlightenment, you get to break that cycle of life and rebirth and just kind of like be done with it at a certain point. So you pair that with Shinto, which seems not to have a ton to say about life after death, except that all dead people can be prayed to and that they'll hear it. So that implies there must be some sort of belief in life after death, because if you can intellectualize it after you're dead, there's got to be something. Shinto also believes that everyone has a soul, and this is very interesting, that the soul can get stuck among the living if a person dies while weighed down with quote unquote excess emotion, or they haven't given a proper funeral. So I think that that's almost equivalent to the idea of having unfinished business.
Yeah, excess emotion
Hmm.
is interesting.
Yes, and this article points out that the excess emotion component proves to be an underlying theme in a lot of Japanese horror. It probably is an underlying theme in a lot of supernatural horror in general, because if something is coming back to like haunt somebody or mess with them, you wouldn't do that for no reason. You're worked up, which you could call excess emotion.
Right, like even the grudge. That's a grudge
Exactly.
they have.
Yes,
Like
that's
it's
excess
literally
emotion.
holding something against someone even still beyond death.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Exactly.
Excess emotion.
And then Sadako in The Ring, or Samara. What is the deal with that? Spoiler alert for The Ring. It's that did their mother drown them in a well?
Yeah, it's I boy, it's been a while since I've watched them, but I think
I haven't either.
Samaro slash Sadako, whether you're watching the original, like if you're watching Ringu, the
Yeah.
Japanese original, or The Ring, the American remake, I think that character was psychic
Mm.
and being experimented on and exploited, and her psychic abilities were tormenting the people around her, leading their mother to drown them in a well.
Yes, that rings a bell. I think that is right. And so they probably had some excess emotion about that that led them to crawl up out of the well and crawl out of the TVs and stuff like that.
Right.
So those are the two kinds of main religious beliefs in Japan. And so as far as living in a culture with a lot of religious fluidity, that can lead to a general understanding that the way that the universe works is fluid. There isn't like one big rule to it. And it's also just beyond our understanding. So there's this ambiguity about things that's just kind of lived with in Japan. And that is a great place for horror to spring from.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like rules can be a really great place for it to spring from too. But I feel like it leads to extra creativity where you're like, well, it could be like this, and I'm not mad about it. And it could be like this.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
both of these things could be true, and I don't feel worked up about it. It's cool, and we can experiment from there. I think it's neat, and it made me think about the way that their religious beliefs affects like Japanese horror could be kind of similar to the way that like Christianity and like Judeo-Christian values have affected some American horror. I was thinking about the idea of a virgin being like the final girl at the end of something, slash people who have sex in a horror movie being killed is probably traceable back to like Catholicism being obsessed with abstinence and purity and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or, Ed and Lorraine Warren in the Conjuring franchise, being like the most moral people in the world who,
Yeah.
in between helping a family get rid of their demons, they like help the family clean their house and talk
And
to the
sing.
kids about God and yeah, sing to the children. And like Ed is always like doing something where he has to wipe oil off his hands.
He's always got his sleeves rolled up.
Yeah, he's doing a bunch of like engineering, plumbing, and like
You help your neighbor.
yeah, sure. But yeah, no, like I think you're 1,000% right about that. I think like the morality system is the thing that sort of dictates how you perceive good and evil.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, and if even if you don't like subscribe to a religion, in your country, it ends up being kind of ingrained in things. You have an awareness of that, and that probably kind of seeps in subconsciously, whether you believe it or you don't. You're just kind of aware of it.
yeah, that's interesting.
It's really interesting. I was so glad that there was an article that was like exactly what I was looking for. I really wanted to know about like culture and how it affected the kind of horror that gets put out, or events and how it affects the horror gets put out. And I was like so thrilled that this guy had written this thing.
This is also where I'm like, it'd be cool to speak to somebody who has studied Japanese folklore and horror,
Hmm.
or like a horror writer, and like pick their brain.
Yeah.
Because it is just something that like it's not our background, and I am so like in love with horror in every form it takes, but it does seem like there's such like a stylistic difference
Hmm.
in the stuff that we're talking about in this episode from yeah, like you said, like Jason. And it is
Right.
funny too because I'm aware of the like those particular franchises, The Grudge and The Ring, as being the sort of equivalent of Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, to the point that Kayako and Samara from those two movies had a Freddy versus Jason movie.
Yes.
And
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you
Samara
see that?
throws out the first pitch at a baseball game.
Yeah,
Like
right.
it is that big and popular, but it's like apples and oranges in terms of like the positions um that those stories are coming from.
Totally. And it's also beyond just horror. I think it probably just boils down to, cultural differences and things being popular one place and,
Yeah.
different things are popular another place. But that's so fascinating to me. Like we're all people, and it's so interesting that by region things will be different. I remember when we moved to, it's not the same thing, but when we were moving from Connecticut to St. Louis, people were saying to us like, "Oh, people are going to be so much nicer there, like things move a little bit slower there." And I was like, "How can that be? Like we're all humans. I'm a human and I live in Connecticut. They're a human, they live in Missouri. Like why are they going to be so much slower? I don't get it." But like it's true to a degree. It's just that they're like
Yeah.
little cultural differences in pockets by all sorts of things, by geography, just by interests, like it's all cultures and subcultures, and it's it's just really interesting to me. It's like it's so weird.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And the fact of the matter is that, like, as much as there are those cultural differences, like, it's all a matter of degrees, right?
Yeah, it's
Theoretically,
all degrees. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
to drive from Connecticut to Missouri, you're driving through the gradient, you
Mhm.
know, like, somebody who lives an hour away from Missouri probably doesn't view Missouri to be, uh, uh, like,
Like so different.
yeah, to be so different. And an hour away from those people, they don't feel
It
that different. And an hour away. But then when you look at the ends of the spectrum, they're
Mhm.
vastly. It's the game of telephone, right? Like it's like, I whisper something into person one's ear, and by the time it goes out there, it's completely different. But along the way, everybody thought it was the same phrase, and it's just
Right.
like, yeah. So that's the difference of like go to the other side of the globe and take a look at like what's scary,
Mhm.
like the creative horror coming out of there, and it's so uh different and fascinating. But it's like,
Right.
man, why can't I be creative like that?
But you're creative in your way.
I know, but I
You
want
know
to be
what I
creative in
mean?
that way too, especially when I read to you some of like the monsters that I'm going to tell you about in a bit. It's like, oh my god, this is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, I find it all very interesting in general.
Yeah.
And just Japanese stuff is really interesting too, Japanese horror. So, you also can't really discount the effect of the atomic bomb being dropped in Hiroshima. The first major Japanese horror movie was called Onibaba. It's from 1964, so pretty soon post war. And there is this sense of invasion and lack of safety that seems like it started to pick up steam in Japanese pop culture after the bomb was dropped. So that kind of creeping omnipresence of something that you can't really change or do anything about, you could also kind of look at the atomic bomb being dropped as something that would be an influence on that, as well as the theme of perseverance as opposed to just eliminating a problem.
Hmm.
Like they really had to like live through something, make your way through it, and they didn't have like just a singular bad guy or a singular problem to be like problem solved. Like they had to like really live through a horrendous thing.
Yeah.
So that was also a big influence on some Japanese horror, and as well in an aesthetic way where like in I think it was in that movie Onibaba, I actually didn't write it down, but I just remember it. They used pictures of people who were killed or hurt by the bomb for some of their makeup design in I think that movie. It may have been a different one. That fact is definitely in the Wikipedia page that I'll have linked in the show notes.
Interesting.
But so like a very direct connection to the bomb and also just a thematic connection to persevering. So there are a couple other differences between American and Japanese horror that are a little bit like black, white, whatever, whatever, that are a little bit easier to look at. So American horror often revolves around venturing into the unknown. I found this very interesting, and this is something that was pointed out by that guy Chris on the website that I gave before. So in American horror, often you're like entering a haunted house, things like that, as opposed to Japanese horror, which has the unknown encroaching on your own territory. So like Sadako comes out of the TV into your house.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Stuff like that. There are also these differences that are like so weird that I never think of, but yeah, it's true. Western horror, and it sounds funny, is often in like dry, crumbling locations, like those haunted houses, cemeteries, things like that. And Japanese horror often plays with the idea of the damp. So, like Sadako or Samara's well, the hand in the grudge being in the shower,
Hmm.
at least in the American version. And so, a theory here is that in the summer, Japan is majorly humid to the point that it almost feels claustrophobic. And so, linking that inability to breathe with threatening spirits kind of makes sense. And
That's
also, the
very
idea that like
interesting.
things grow in like damp, small spaces, maybe spirits can kind of manifest in those damp, small spaces. I thought that was so cool.
That's interesting. And like mold as a sort of creeping, you better hope you notice it before it's too late. It's going to
Yes,
take hold. Um, it's,
exactly that.
yeah, it's growing, it's creeping. That's
Mhm.
interesting.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
I know. So last thing I'm going to touch on that's going to kind of lead into your topic is a little bit of the folklore, not exactly, but the way that these stories kind of got out to people. So they had ghost stories, which are called kaiden, which translates roughly to strange story. And those have been passed on and adapted in Japan since like the year 794. So a long, long
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
And so some of those characters of those stories have as well kind of like been passed along, known as yokai, which I know you're going to talk about. And that was that is that how you pronounce it?
Yokai?
Yokai, okay. And so that was originally kind of a catch-all term for anything supernatural when that phrase first came about. And then over time and lately, it's more specifically about beings. And so these stories, this kaiden and stories of yokai, spread more rapidly when printing technology came about and stories could be written down. But another way that they spread largely is through Japanese theater like kabuki and no. So kabuki you may have heard of. There's when you say kabuki, like kind of thick white makeup might come to mind, and masks and things like that. And kabuki was traditionally theater for like everyday normal people, and no is the theater for the higher class. But both of those still often had stories that were grounded in kaiden, and some of those plays and productions ended up as inspiration for modern Japanese horror movies. So like Sadako from Ringu looks very similar to her inspiration in kabuki and no plays.
That's interesting.
I know. And so those kabuki and no plays often contain stories of yokai. So why don't you give us some examples of them?
Oh, hell yeah.
Mhm.
I straight up just looked up like cool, scary yokai monster ghosts.
Perfect.
Actually, in the group in this past week, one of our listeners, Alexander Anderson, shared a post in there from a page that's called Multo, Multo.
Mhm.
And it was about the Japanese yokai. And there were just one of the things like in that post was the Rokuro Kubi, the female monster that whose neck can grow long and her head can like snake around. We talked about that way back in episode 25.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I was poking around in there looking at all these awesome, like really inventive, bizarre monsters. And I just sort of like picked a few that I thought were the most interesting to share. But before I really dive into those specific creatures, yokai, I thought this was kind of interesting. The word yokai is made up of the kanji. Kanji is like the symbols to build words. Um,
Mhm.
and so they are. It's a combination of the kanji for bewitching, attractive, calamity, and apparition, mystery, suspicious. So
Cool.
yokai are like just like there's a wide range of them. I'm going to talk about specifically things that are somewhat dangerous or darkly mischievous, but they can also sort of be benign kind of creatures. Sometimes they bring good fortune. Um, Now, having said that, here are some really unfortunate, unfortunate monsters. Let's start off with the some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard of. There's a yokai, a Japanese ghost called the Nopperabo. And also,
Okay.
please, I apologize for my pronunciation. I tried to look up some of the pronunciation, but I'm sure I'm going to get most of this wrong.
Mhm.
Um, the Nopperabo is a faceless ghost, literally referred to as no face. They usually appear to their victim as somebody they know,
Oh God.
only to then erase all of their facial features to scare them. Their goal is to just scare them. Um,
And
it's
also, I'd imagine it's disturbing to see somebody you know have their facial features just wipe out in front of you.
Yes, 1,000%. It's really disarming
It's a mind
and
F.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of this information that I'm going to share with you comes from yokai.fandom.com. It's basically like a yokai wiki.
Mhm.
And so here's how they sort of describe how the Nopperabo operate. A favorite game of the Nopperabo is to work in teams, where one of them scares a victim who then flees to find another person walking around late at night. The victim frantically relates their story to the stranger until the person replies, "They had no face?" What, you mean like this? And then wipes their own face off their head.
Oh my god.
So they were one of them too. You didn't get away from the monster. The person you thought was going to save you is still a monster.
They're everywhere. So one of the things I'm curious about in your stories of yokai are noticing those themes that I found. So that kind of taps into an everywhereness, like an
Yes.
inescapability.
Yeah, even like even to that point, and this is less about the Nopperabo, but of just like that when you describe like the claustrophobia, that's how I think of the Grudge. There's a scene in the Grudge
Mhm.
where a character is in bed and senses something under the covers and lifts the blanket, and it's Kayako under the bed, like resting her head on their stomach, and it's like, like you're so close to me. I can't get away from you. What are
Ew.
you? Ew. I think that's the next line that character says. Ugh! So here's another quote. Sometimes a poor man will run all the way home having run into multiple faceless ghosts only to tell his wife what he saw and have her reply, "Oh, you mean like this?" And I love the phrasing.
Unending.
It's unending, inescapable. There's a Stephen King-ism to it of the phrase, the repeated phrase that's a little almost like folksy or playful,
Yeah.
but like is actually like a foreboding or horrible trap.
Right.
So it's hard to describe this next concept, but this yokai, the Nopperabo, might actually be sometimes a different yokai. This is tricky. There are animal shapeshifters, which seem like they are able to turn into the Nopperabo, like a tanuki. You know, like what the tanuki is? It's sort of, they refer to it as like a raccoon dog.
I only know it from Mario.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. In Mario 3, he's able to wear a tanuki suit, which a lot
Mhm.
of people refer to like as raccoon Mario, but it's not
Yeah.
actually a raccoon. It's a Japanese animal called a tanuki. And so like the tanuki has like different like folkloric characteristics, but in the sort of like yokai sense, they're a shapeshifter. And one of the
Mhm.
things they love to shapeshift into would be a Nopperabo to mess with people and be faceless. Um, all the additional stories that were related about the Nopperabo online play out just the exact same way that I told you before. They're 100% of the same 100% of the time. A fisherman finds a beautiful young woman, she wipes off her face. Then he sees his wife, she wipes off her face. A traveler finds a beautiful young woman in the middle of nowhere, bam, face wipe. He runs and meets a merchant, that guy has no face. All the same, completely identical, except for one. Enter Shiri-me,
Mm.
believed to be a type of Nopperabo.
Okay.
Now, we record this show live every week on youtube.com/talkbomb. Those of you listening out in podcast land or watching this after the fact, you should join us live. It's fun. We do a little pre-show, a little post-show. We talk to the chat a little bit. As we were sort of going through the intro to our topics, I could see in our chat, our running chat here, one of our viewers, CBFR, call out Shiri-me.
Mm.
Great news, CBFR. Let's talk about Shiri-me.
And by the way, if you watch the video afterward, you can still see the live chat. You can see what happened in there. So you can still kind of just like join the party late if you want to watch the video after the fact.
1,000%. So, okay, Shiri-me. Still faceless, still trying to mess with you. It still is, I should also point out that the motive of a lot of this stuff of the Nopperabo is the mere act of scaring these unsuspecting travelers is the joy itself.
Mhm.
They are teasing. They're just trying to catch you off guard. They love to see you flounder.
It's the journey, not the destination.
Exactly, Kristen. Exactly. Now, Shiri-me has a very particular flavor of pulling this trick off. This time, they don't need a partner to help get all the scares. They can do it all on their own. Here's a story, again, from yokai.fandom.com. The story goes as follows. Long ago, a samurai was walking at night down the road to Kyoto when he heard someone calling out for him to wait. "Who's there?" he asked nervously, only to turn around and find a man stripping off his clothes and pointing his bare buttocks at the flabbergasted traveler.
Oh my god, did they wipe that? There's
Wipe
the crack
this.
disappears.
Hey, wipe that. A huge glittering eye then opened up where the strange man's anus should have been. It is also apparent that the Shiri-me may be a type of Nopperabo, only it can give a double surprise. First...
One cheek, then two? Is that the double surprise?
Well, first it shows the featureless face, then it bends over and exposes the eyeball butt, as it says here. The Shiri-me doesn't have any bad intentions or evil purpose. It just thinks it's fun to surprise people. Literally, a creature with an eye inside its butt. It has no face.
And it's just having a good time.
Just
it's
having
here
a
to
blast.
have fun.
Booty eyeball blast off.
Hey, kid.
Super party. Hey, kid. It's like almost like highbrow to reference American Graffiti.
I know. I've only seen like 15 minutes of American Graffiti, and part of that was the beginning where somebody in a car goes, "Hey, kid!" and they press ham on the car and drive away. And Will and I reference that like all the time.
Hey, kid. So funny. It's a butt. Yeah. Hey, Shiri-me. An eyeball in the butt, glistening in the night.
That's dedication to a bit, by the way.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we're really going for it now.
Yeah,
Hey.
like was Shiri-me born with a glittering eyeball in its butt, or did it like, create these circumstances for itself somehow because they knew it would give them the biggest laugh?
Right.
Either way, hats off to you, Shiri-me.
Maybe it's born
guys,
with
the
it.
unknown, salute you.
We salute
Maybe
you,
they're born with it.
Shiri-me.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
Maybe it's Shiri-me. Oh, hey, Shiri-me. You're gonna leave me. Your butthole eyeball. I think it can see me. Shiri-me.
There's a song on the new Fiona album. What? Fiona Apple album? Fiona album. Called Shamika, and the chorus is Shamika said I had potential. Shiri-me said I had potential.
Shiri-me. If Shiri-me told me I had potential, that is like a total badge of honor. I'm trying to, and quite possibly failing to show people this. You might have to edit out a little bit around here.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, I was trying to make it seamless, but it's not
It's fine.
quite cooperating. Yeah, this is Shiri-me for people who are watching live.
Are you intentionally making it go in and out like that? Whoa.
Ew. Yeah, no, Shiri-me, and you can see how this guy is completely taken aback.
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
And look, Shiri-me laughing away.
Having a blast. Having a ball. Look at that. So here's a weird thing that I found out. It turns out, I've been aware of this, but I didn't know much about it. There is a game franchise called Yokai Watch.
Okay.
It is something of, from what I've known it to be, a Pokemon competitor.
Mhm.
Pokemon is all about, it's pocket monsters. You catch them, you train them, you evolve them, whatever.
Yeah.
Yokai Watch, I knew that it was a bunch of little creatures, but I didn't know what yokai were. So
Right.
now realizing that yokai are spirits and ghosts and stuff, I decided to look up and see if the very creatures that I'm talking to you about, do they appear in this very colorful kids game? And so I Googled, is Shiri-me in this children's game Yokai Watch? And I'm not the first person to have asked that question. It turns out that no, Shiri-me is not in that game, but also maybe there's a character in there that is sort of a stand-in for Shiri-me. So let me introduce you to Cheek Squeak.
Oh my God.
There's a character in this video game called Cheek Squeak who has a butt for a face, and the artwork I found of it has it blowing out brown smoke.
Okay,
Now,
this is definitely a callback.
Right? Without a doubt. It's gotta be. It has to be, and it must be. Anyway, Cheek Squeak. We'll be checking in on Yokai Watch, the kids game, as I continue on through, because I have found how they have like sort of kidified these creatures. But that is the first one, the faceless ghost, Nopperabo, who sometimes has an eyeball in its butt. Let's move on.
Let's.
This next one is Jorogumo,
Okay.
known as the Spider Lady.
Ooh.
I was very excited to read up about this. Straight up a ghost that is in the form of a spider.
Okay.
Or a spider that becomes a ghost. It's kind of hard to tell. It can take the form of a woman when it wants to eat a human. Even when it's in its human form, its reflection will show a giant spider. The name Jorogumo comes from a real kind of spider. In English, that spider is known as the golden orb weaver.
Oh, I mean, that sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah, I Googled it and
As far as spiders go, I mean, I don't really care for spiders,
I
but
regretted Googling it.
yeah.
Listen, I'm not the most squeamish. I'm usually fine with this kind of a thing, but like I was sitting down here in the basement and I was looking at these pictures of spiders
I don't
and like I could like feel it across the top of my foot, you know? Like I
yeah,
just don't like
I
that
don't
feeling.
I don't like a spider.
No, I don't need it. So, evidently, the golden orb weaver spider can grow big enough to catch and eat small birds.
Oh, vom.
It is
No way.
that large, potentially.
No
Here's
way.
here's a quote from the Yokai fandom website. These spiders are renowned for their large size, their vividly beautiful colors, the large and strong webs they weave, and for the cruel destruction they wreak on young men. It was
Okay.
then that I realized they must have accidentally shifted from describing the real life spider
Right.
to talking about the ghost.
It seems that way.
It sure seems like they pivoted mid sentence. Anyway, let's stick with the ghost for now. The name means entangling bride
Okay.
or binding bride.
Cool.
But that's sort of a cover up. That's a modern cover up. The original name is whore spider.
Oh, yikes.
Woof. No wonder they changed it.
Yeah. Good change. Good edit.
Yeah, good change.
Great change.
Good change. Good change. Latrine.
I know.
Jorogumo.
It's a good change.
It's a good
Good change. It's from it's from Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh my god. Jorogumo live solitary lives both as spiders and as yokai. When a golden orb weaver reaches 400 years of age, it develops magical powers and begins to feed on human prey instead of instinct. So this is sort of that blending of natural world with paranormal world. They are saying that literally it used to be the golden orb spider, and then if it lives long enough, it becomes this creature.
Evolves.
Yeah.
That reminds me a little bit of the giant spider thing in It.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but yeah, you're 1,000% right.
I mean, I think there's a lot of spider lore out there in different cultures and things like that. So
For sure. Yeah,
they're
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily connected, but maybe that's like a connecting thread, web.
Oh boy. Oh
Or
boy,
something
boy.
like that.
Yeah.
I
I bet
don't
we
know.
could do a whole show on icky yucky bug monsters.
Oh, I don't like bugs at all.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that doesn't sound
Um,
like fun. There's
s-
also that musical Kiss of the Spider Woman, starring
oh,
Vanessa Williams in the 90s.
oh my God. Yeah, that
I
sounds
wonder if that
familiar.
has anything to do with like scary stuff.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
They make their nests in caves, forests, or empty houses in towns. They possess a cunning intelligence and cold heart, and see humans as nothing more than insects to feed on. They're skilled deceivers and powerful shapeshifters, usually spending their lives appearing as young, sexy, and stunningly beautiful women. Legend has it that a man was resting at the foot of a waterfall when his feet were bound with a vast number of spider threads. To free himself, he cut the threads and tied them to a stump of a tree, which was then yanked from the ground and drawn into the waters.
Oh.
This legend is repeated about several places, one of which is a place called Kashi Kobuchi. Here, just after the stump is pulled into the pool, the lumberjack or the traveler hears a voice say, "How clever, how clever."
Ooh.
Like, you've deceived me. You
I see what
managed
you
to-
did there.
For this event, this area in real life came to be known as Kashi Kobuchi, which literally translates to clever abyss. So like
Cool.
a folkloric story that actually gave the real
Name.
name of the region or that area. Very interesting.
Awesome.
It also made me think this sort of idea of like the Black Widow, right? Like the woman who's going to kill her husband or something like that. And it also made me think of this, the Spider Witch. Now, I think that we've talked about this at some point on the show in the past, but I couldn't find it in my notes. So I'm just going to tell you about it real quick right now.
It doesn't ring a bell to me.
The Spider Witch is a character from the Ghostbusters video game
Okay.
from like a few years back, just released on Switch last year, where like all the main cast came back and everything. It basically functions as a Ghostbusters 3 of a sort. In the video game, there's a character named the Spider Witch that haunts the Sedgwick Hotel, where they went when they originally caught Slimer.
Mhm.
There's some confusion as to whether or not she haunts the 12th floor or the 13th. 13th would be appropriate, right?
Yeah.
Like the 13th floor would be scary,
Yeah.
but
Scary.
whatever. Yeah. There's sort of a backstory to this person who in the video game, she is just she's referred to as having been a serial killer from the 1920s who would lure men to her room and kill them. She was in a cult. She was in the cult of Gozer that was headed by Ivo Shandor, the architect.
Hell yeah.
And in the video game, you end up traveling to her room, which the boundaries between the real world and the ghost world are breaking down, so it's all covered in spider webs. And she's a boss fight. She's literally a giant spider body, like almost like a minotaur, where instead of
A centaur?
centaur, yeah, instead of a
Uh-huh.
horse body, it's a spider body and
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lady torso.
Cool.
Yeah, in the game, Harold Ramis ends up commenting when you defeat her that you've just solved a 70-year-old murder case, which is like
Yeah.
very fun and ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Evidently,
awesome.
she killed for the cult of Gozer, and as a reward, she was elevated to become a deity, becoming
Ah.
the Spider Witch and haunting the Sedgwick. Very fun, but
Ah.
also very, very, very much like the Yorogumo, the
Yes.
the yokai.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it takes a long time to get to that status.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have to like earn it
Right.
or something like that. And
That's sweet.
yeah, super cool. So now let's go on to another yokai called the Hon-onna, also known as the Bone Woman. Straight up, this is a spooky skeleton person that
Cool.
tricks people, tricks men by portraying herself as an attractive lady. And it sort of is where I started to go like, oh, a lot of the things I'm looking up are about like women that are tricking you.
Right.
Like a
Right.
lot
They
of them.
they, like, draw you in.
Yeah.
Also, I think that a lot of times, like, especially back in the day, women were thought of as, like, kinda weak and non-threatening, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a good honeypot situation because 'cause you're probably gonna be safe or this is gonna be awesome, and then bam.
Yeah, I guess so. Super repeating trope in what I'm going to be telling you about, but it was
Yeah.
also some of the most inventive stuff I found.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hon-onna, the Bone Woman. Uh, First appeared in the story Boten Doro from a yokai encyclopedia from 1779, which in turn was derived from a Buddhist Chinese collection from 1666, which itself was a version of a Chinese work called the Jiandeng Xinhua in 1378.
Wow.
So this is an old concept, the Bone Woman.
Yeah.
It said that once she starts seducing men, she sucks the life force out of them to the point where there's nothing but a pile of dust.
Awesome. My kinda gal.
I know, and here's a story. At night, a Hon-onna arises from the grave and wanders to the house of her former lover. Her appearance is a great shock to those who had believed her to be dead. This shock quickly turns into such joy that it blinds them to any clues that something might be wrong. Even the Hon-onna herself doesn't know of her condition, as she is driven only by love. She exists as a ghost only to continue the love she had in life. She spends the night and leaves in the morning, and this unholy coupling can continue for days or even weeks without being noticed. Each night she drains some of her lover's life force, and he grows ever sicker and weaker. Without intervention, he will eventually die, joining his lover forever in death's embrace.
Wow. So there are a couple of kind of the throughways in this. Wait, I lost my train of thought.
Well, there are things in here that are unexpected given what I originally read of this kind of creature, right? Like
Mhm.
it first feels very vampiric, right? I'm a dead person, I'm a skeleton, and I'm going to suck the life out of you. But the
Yes, there's
implication in
that.
this story that they don't even know what they're doing is
Mhm.
really dark and really sad.
Yes. The other vampiric thing was that the Spider Woman would look in a mirror and see herself as a spider
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
instead of like her lady form.
Yes, and even in both of them to that end, there are things of an attempt to recognize the truth. There is some sort
Right.
of an illusion to both of them. The Spider Woman just looks like a beautiful lady. The
Mhm.
bone woman is actually a skeleton. But if you are paying attention or if you're not deluded or whatever, you might be able to see through it. You also might not.
Right. I realized what I was thinking of. The idea of excess emotion, keeping somebody kind of tethered in the real world, is present in this story. Her excess emotion is like love, I guess,
Yeah.
and wanting to be with a partner. And you usually think of excess emotion as like anger or vengeance pops up a lot. But in this case, it's love, but it's still excess emotion keeping you around.
Right. And so that's the conversion process that you go through to become a Hon-onna.
Hmm.
That's really, really interesting. I like
Yeah,
that.
too much.
Yeah. Evidently, there's a convention in these kinds of stories that someone who's close to the victim will be able to see through the illusion. But the
Mhm.
ghost never realizes her own condition and continues to visit every night. Which that is like as sort of sad as that is, the idea that like, oh, you why this is just what I have to do. This is what I want to do. Like I don't even think that I'm hurting you. I don't even
Right.
know that. That's sad, but it's also so scary.
Yeah,
The
totally.
sort of like delusion, the disconnect from reality is really bizarre.
And unrelentingness of that.
Yeah, 1,000%. It says a home can be warded with prayers and magic charms against entry by ghosts, but they only work as long as the master of the house wills them to. So if you get won over by the Hon-onna, your charms aren't going to work anymore.
Yeah.
As her body decays further, her enchanting allure only increases, and eventually most men succumb and let her into their homes one last time, sacrificing their own lives to the ghost of the woman they loved.
Oh man.
Yeah. One of those earliest stories that I referenced, the Boten Doro from 1779, goes like this. There was a young man named Ogiwara Shinojo who is wandering around at night and who meets a young woman named O Tsuyu. She carries a red peony lantern, peony being like the flower, like a
Mhm.
flower lantern, and he immediately falls in love with her. Every evening, they now meet each other for love and to sleep together. The overly curious neighbor sneaks secretly to the bedroom of the couple to observe them. When the
Like a
light of the
dancer.
bedroom falls onto the couple, the neighbor nearly dies in shock when he recognizes that the sleeping Shinojo shares his bed with a moving skeleton.
That's awesome.
Awesome 300-year-old horror story.
Yeah, that'll teach you to peep too.
Oh, oh, it'll teach you to peep, all right. That'll teach you to peep.
Yeah. Shouldn't be peeping.
so,
Leave your neighbor to their business.
yeah, exactly. Leave me alone, bro.
Yeah.
Uh, peeping neighbor. It makes me think this story of the Hon-onna. It's very It Follows.
Yes.
In a way, there's a whole thing in the movie It Follows where like if it catches up with you, it's basically like a sort of like STD curse,
Yeah.
and so it will celebrate you to death.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's also kind of a succubus thing. Like a succubus is like a sex ghost.
Yeah, totally, totally, totally. It also made me think of that one episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark called The
Where there's
Tale
a
of the
sex
Dream.
ghost.
What?
Where Are You Afraid of the Dark got real grown up for one episode. There's a sex ghost.
The Tale of the Sex Ghost.
Yeah. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
When that episode ends and they go back to the campfire, everyone left, and it's just the storyteller being like, "Guys, what, you didn't like? Oh, come on.
And us at home being like, isn't this Snick?
Come on. That story's badass." But no, there's an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark called The Tale of the Dream Girl, where a guy is being haunted by a girl that essentially is being like, "I miss you, I love you, like come back to me. You have to come back to me." But she's plainly a ghost.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think early on he thinks she's stalking him, and then he realizes, oh no, this is like an unrelenting spirit that has deluded itself into thinking that we're soulmates or something like that. And I almost don't want to spoil where that goes for people who don't know it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember.
I'm going to spoil it. I'm going to say it. Yeah. Apologies, but this show's been gone for 25 years. So it's this character, Johnny, who, he's
That's
going.
like cool 50s dude, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
remember that.
He's like a greaser kind of looking dude. He works in like a bowling alley and
Yeah.
he's struggling and like he feels like ignored and nobody really talks to him. And the only person that he really interacts with is his little sister. And then he starts being haunted by this girl who died a long time ago, they eventually find out, and is insinuating that she wants him to be with her. And what does that mean? Is that like joining me in the grave? Is that death? Is that killing me? And the twist at the end of the episode is that she, the girl, the ghost, had died in a car accident when her car stalled on some train tracks. She died in that car with her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back from the grave. They both did, but he didn't remember the accident. He didn't remember anything.
You didn't realize.
And the reason why everybody ignores him and nobody really talks to him is because he's a ghost. He's been a ghost the whole time.
Yep.
And she actually is the love of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so he finally acknowledges that. They meet together in the grave. He says goodbye to his quote unquote little sister and goes off for a sort of bittersweet happily ever after with the person that had been haunting him. And it made me think of that, which then even looking into that episode, people claim that episode may have inspired The Sixth Sense, the movie, which I don't think is necessarily true, but it's interesting.
I mean, it's kind of a similar storyline.
Yeah, I didn't know I was a ghost.
So it's not terrible, yeah.
Yeah, I heard that the original title for The Sixth Sense was I didn't know I was a ghost.
I was a ghost.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, Will.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
How about that?
Made them change it, Will.
I know. How could they? How could they?
I know.
So the Hon-onna, who's a skeleton that sort of is a succubus, is going to suck the life force out of you, is in that kid's game Yokai Watch.
Okay.
As a character named Dazabel.
Oh my god. Oh my god. How do they kidify this?
It is, they turned it into a sort of...
He just wants to be your friend really hard?
I don't even know like the actual characterization of it.
Yeah.
But it's like a definitely feminine sort of figure with a bow and a dress and carrying a pink umbrella, but it's a skull face.
Right, so I guess they're a bit of a charmer, both with some scare to them.
Dazabel.
Dazabel, that's so funny.
What they turned that scary sex ghost into.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's homogenized for the kids.
Exactly. All right, I've got one teeny little guy left. It's just a sort of almost a fun factoid rather than anything else. I learned about something called the Jinmenju, which is known as the human face tree. Literally a tree where the fruit that grows on it looks like human heads, and they are laughing. They're just vacantly staring faces laughing. And if they laugh too hard, the fruit falls from the tree.
Oh, that's awesome.
For those of you who know what the following is, this is sort of a mind blower. This became a Pokemon, not a Yokai Watch character, but an actual Pokemon named Execute, which I thought growing up was literally a Pokemon version of a pile of eggs.
Yeah, that sounds like an egg thing to me.
Right? But those eggs, when they evolve, turn into something of like a coconut tree, which is bizarre to me. I don't know why an egg creature would evolve into a coconut tree. But now I realize what it is. Those things were faces, and they were seeds. When planted, they become a Jinmenju, a tree that grows fruit that looks like heads.
That's awesome.
How insane is that?
That's crazy.
Crazy is that? So weird.
That reminds me of the creepy trees in The Wizard of Oz. The apples don't have faces, but the trees do. They're very scary.
Yeah. Oh my God. So scary. I did not like it when they were like, "How about what if somebody came along and pulled fruit off of you?"
Me neither. That's like one of the scariest parts of that movie.
Leave me alone, you tree.
Yeah, you tree.
Leave me alone, you stupid tree. There you go. That's just a bunch of like cool, weird yokai.
Excellent. Thank you, Will.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What a ride. This was a fun one for us. I hope you guys enjoyed it. That takes us to the end of another Guide to the Unknown. If you want to keep up with us, you can follow us on social media everywhere at GTTUpod. And we'd also love it if you joined our private Facebook group. It's the Guide to the Unknown Secret Society, and you can find it by going to facebook.com/groups/GTTUpod. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we would love it if you would support us over on patreon.com/GTTUpod. And when you do, if you do it at the $4 a month or more level, then you get a bonus episode of the show every month as a bonus, plus other extras just here and there on top of that as bonuses, including the live stream that we're going to do this coming Sunday, May 2nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to discuss our topics for May. So please come and hang out. We'd love to hear what you have to say, and we may or may not use them, but it'll be a fun hangout.
Yeah, exactly. You get to sort of like get a peek at a little Guide to the Unknown planning sesh.
Yeah,
Which is
totally.
super fun. So definitely hit that up. You can also join our Facebook Secret Society to chat back with other people who watch and listen to the show. Hey, it happened this week. Alexander Anderson posted that that yokai thing, and
Right,
it ended up on the
whole
show.
episode.
Conversations from the group might end up on a future episode. So do that by going to facebook.com/groups/GTTUpod. Request to
this.
join. What?
I already said this.
You already said this?
Yes.
Oh, I was trying to think of things you hadn't said yet, and I thought I had this. Damn it.
Yeah.
I was trying to think like, all right, well, what's the thing I'm going to say? And I didn't hear you say it.
Do, what's it called? Reviews.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. Hey, you can also leave us an Apple Podcast review to share with the world your love for Guide to the Unknown. We love it when we get to read new 5-star reviews from people out there. You can also review us on places like Stitcher. I believe Facebook has a place to leave reviews. Podchaser is certainly a new growing community for people that are into podcasts. And it sort of boosts our reputation out there around the world. And it gives us something to look at when a new one pops up and smile about. It makes our day. So please consider doing that. If you want, you can also chat with Kristen or myself online individually.
Right. I'm at Chillin' Kristen on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And I am the Myth Traveler. So thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We will be back next week for more spooky old stories. But until that time comes, we must travel.
Back to the netherworld, go we.
Yeah. Yeah. What was that little noise? Yeah. That was fun. Sorry, I was trying to think ahead to something else. I didn't even hear you say
it.
What's going on, everybody?
Yeah.
Cool, weird show. I don't know about Yokai Watch. I'm a little curious about it, but it looks very, like, kidsy. Mm-hmm. I want spooky stuff to be at least a little spooky and eerie. And it seems like they just sort of, like, made it light and bubbly and fun. Which I get.
Yeah, it seems like it's for kids.
Yeah. I found, by the way, I didn't really have the right way to, like, sort of cue them up. But I have other stuff that I found. Mm-hmm. Which I can share with you real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Cheek Squeak, of course. It's Dazabel. Oh, here's one of the Hon-onna. There's artwork of a
cool
skeleton lady ghost that's gonna get you.
That looks awesome.
Isn't that rad? Yeah, there's a lot of artwork of the Hon-onna. This is one of the spider witch sort of spider ladies. This is from Yokai Watch. I forget what she's called in that game, but she's sort of a boss character.
She looks kind of scary. That's the least childish things from that you've shown so far, I think.
Yeah, totally. This is sort of the artwork of what that spider character looks like in like the folkloric aspect. Here's one of the faceless ghosts. That guy, of course, Shiri-me with his butthole eye. The spider witch from Ghostbusters.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I think that's all I got. But yeah, I thought it might be fun to just sort of like show off a few.
Yeah, go through them. That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a fun topic. It was certainly also gave me the like digging into like monsters and ghosts stuff that I've been craving.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought this was super interesting.
Yeah, that was really cool. It's cool to know like sort of like the cultural like why of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating. Those ghosts are so crazy and unique.
I know. I love it.
It made me think we should do an American one show. You know what I mean? Like, because like if we were to think about like American monsters, what are those? You know what I mean? Like the Headless Horseman, probably. I bet if we get rolling and talk about them, there are a bunch. But
Bigfoot.
You know what I mean? Like that have Bigfoot. Yeah, that have as distinctive traits and things like that. It's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. That is interesting. This is interesting. In the chat, Bloomy Blonde Hearts writes, there's a video game series called Fatal Frame that brings in all of the good J-horror stuff, lots of spooky ghosts and atmosphere. Maybe this is in the air right now. Maybe we should get a copy of Fatal Frame and play it.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
Yeah. There was a recent post. I wish I could remember that guy's last name. I apologize. But the guy, Chris, who did who runs the website that I linked to, or that I'll link to in the show notes. One of his more recent blog posts, because I found the thing about J-horror through Google, and then I clicked the blog's like homepage to see what more recent stuff he does. And one of the most recent posts was about Fatal Frame. So I don't know if it was just that he likes digging into that stuff, or maybe there's something new.
Yeah.
In the Fatal Frame-averse? I'm not sure.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe the time is right. Maybe the time is right. Multiple people have brought up Fatal Frame in the chat, independent of one another.
Drew did, yeah.
Yeah. CBFR asks, have we heard about the Japanese taxi drivers reporting ghostly passengers? No, I have not. I'm very interested in that, though.
That's awesome.
You have piqued my curiosity.
Yeah, if you're in the Facebook group, post a link to that in the Facebook group. That'd be great.
Yeah.
And if not, maybe email it to us.
Yeah, for sure.
gpod@gmail.com.
Yeah, not only is my curiosity piqued, I'd like to take a peek.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, please.
The hood, that taxi.
Hell yeah. Hey, do you know that there's an episode of Taxi that is scary?
No, really?
Yeah.
Weird.
I think Danny DeVito believes that who's that guy? He's from Independence Day. Judd Hirsch. Judd Hirsch, there's like an omen that he's gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny DeVito. Oh my God. If we ever have to cancel Danny DeVito, Danny DeLito. Hashtag Danny DeLito.
Danny DeLito.
Holy shit. Sorry. Whoa. Yeah, Danny DeLito thinks that the omen is true, and so he's doing everything he can to prevent Judd Hirsch from being mysteriously killed by omens.
Weird.
It was awesome. I saw it on TV as a kid on Nick at Night or something like that.
Yeah.
And had no ability to look it up online after. So it was but a vague memory. And I watched a clip maybe last year and it was still rad. Danny DeLito is like sweating and like panicking. And Judd Hirsch is insisting that this is all going to be fine. Yeah. And it's like, it's all predicated on like, well, in the dream, before I die, this happens, and this happens. And then the first happens.
Yeah, right.
And Danny DeLito's like, see, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Judd Hirsch is like, it's not going to happen, you boob. The second thing hasn't happened yet. Boom. Second thing happens. See, I told you. And he goes, no, because then the clock chimes and there's a knock at the door. And you hear the clock chime and they wait through it all. And he goes, see, there's no knock at the door. It's fine. We're going to be fine. Boom, knock at the door. Like, it's something like, I can't claim to have memorized this episode of Taxi. But like,
Judd Hirsch must make it.
No, I think he's murdered. I think the Spider Witch gets him at the end of that episode.
Oh my God.
I think it was the last episode of Taxi.
Why don't people talk about that more?
I know. It's bizarre. I think Shiri-me is at the door.
Oh my God.
Does a little peekaboo work. And it's just over.
Peekaboo work. Well, let's get going. Well, even I have a phone meeting with somebody in half an hour, and I got to scarf down some homemade pasta real quick.
Yeah, and I got to scarf up because I'm not wearing enough layers. All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you again in the future. You're all wonderful to us.
Thank you for hanging out. We'll see you soon.
All right, catch you later, everyone.
All right, bye.